All right. We are live. I was caught off guard telling me to not play in the dime contest. Who would ever tell me that, Matt? Come on. The dime contest, that's where I live. I'm the last of the big spenders. How was your evening last night? Haywood Highsmith looked good, except he got 4 less stocks than the creative player who started before him.
Yeah, definitely a wild slate, as they all are. MLB as well. They're all meshing together for me right now because so many slates, so little time. You know the deal.
It's just becoming that blur. And this year I have not played. I haven't played sports outside of the main ones just because there was too much. It's too much now with sports betting. So I gave up NHL, which I was sad too, but I had to give that up. And then I've given up subslates on these sports. I've given up showdowns for NBA. And now that it's basketball and baseball, and I'm trying to play on 3 sites. Good times. I had a good night last night on FanDuel. Almost won the whatever they call it, the nickel and the quarter over there. Finished top 4 and top 7, I think, in those, but then gave it all back on DraftKings because, that's how my baseball is going. Basketball was okay on DraftKings, but yeah, baseball got kicked in the teeth. I never win on opening day, but I usually win within the first couple, and that hasn't happened yet, Matt. What's going on? I demand a recount.
Yeah. Weird MLB slate to start. I mean, the Yankees, if you're not playing the Yankees, you're not doing anything.
Second day, had the same conversations with myself exactly as yesterday. 60% Judge. That feels a little high. I'm going to cap him at 30. He's not going to do it again. He did it again.
So did Chisholm. Man, that looks like a really tough fade right now. Just the Yankees in general with those bats. What do you take on? What's your take on those bats, the torpedo bats?
So, good friend of the show, T. McBee, sent me a whole Twitter thread on those, and I was looking into it. I think it's rather interesting, but then I thought I heard Greg mention. Don't worry, we'll get to basketball here. We're just collecting people. When Greg was on this morning, I thought he was mentioning or referencing there was an interview where Judge had mentioned he wasn't using that bat because he didn't use it last year and he had done so well last year. So who knows who's doing what? I think he's not using it. Yeah, it's interesting and within the rules. I mean, if MLB is not going to think through this and cordon certain things off, then hey, go for it. It's like stock car. There ain't nothing stock about a stock car. Know what I mean?
I do know what you mean. It's just wild. Like, why is it now just happening? How is it not? How is it within the rules? I don't have the answers to these questions. It's just interesting when you see these bats that look like they're not regulation bats, and they are.
It's going to be a cricket bat pretty soon. I mean, the last thing to remember, way back in the day, probably it wasn't necessarily before steroids, because steroids existed in the NFL for quite some time. But before the baseball players got on them, I remember they would put they called them teeny bouncers, those little rubber balls. They drill out the core of the bat and put those in them. And somebody's broke off the top and they spilled out. The field.
No, you're talking about cork bats, aren't you?
Yeah, way back in the day, a variety of ways of doing that. So my point to wrap this all up is, if you had that and wrote rules in where that wasn't going to happen, how could you not see ahead that this was likely on the horizon and just put the kibosh on it from the jump?
It reminds me totally of cork bats. Albert Bell had a couple funny cork bat incidents, so I am.
Who was it that crawled through the?
That was it was the pitcher. I can't remember his name, but infamously,
Oral Hershiser. He's too straight laced. I can't remember who it was though.
It was a reliever. Yeah, I'm gonna look it up right now. That's so good.
EMac is juicing. No, I'm on the straight and narrow these days. There's
Jason Grimsley
going on. Jason Grimsley, yes. Oh,
crawled through the vents to retrieve the bat.
That deserves points, right, for ingenuity and daring. All right, everybody, we're all here. We have everybody. If you're playing on FanDuel like I am, that locked just a moment ago. They included the 6:00 game, so that is Portland at New York, the Knickerbockers. We are going to have 4 games going off at 7:00 here, and then one at 7:30, and then the lonely outpost on for the late night hammer is Houston at Phoenix. So we have quite the day or evening ahead of us here. We've got March Madness is wrapping up with determining the last team into the Final Four. We have NASCAR. Hopefully Malakar holds on there to earn some victory points and even more importantly cash on DraftKings. And we've got the baseball late night baseball game as well, Matt. But let's focus on basketball here. We're going to go game by game. There's a couple games with not a lot to talk about, but in this first one here, of course, I close out the sheet. It's just perfect timing, Eric. Just way to go. So Cade Cunningham, doubtful. Do you think he's going to miss a 4th consecutive game? I don't think he plays tonight.
Yeah, doubtful. I'm never thinking they play. I mean, they're doubtful to play, so I take it for their word.
Yep. So he's missed 3 games with that strained calf. He is going to likely miss a 4th. So let's start in there. Minnesota with no major injuries at this point. They are favored by 7 at home. Is there anything popping for you on the visitor side, Detroit here? Is it another Dennis Schroeder event?
Well, certainly not from the Minnesota side, but from the Detroit side, not really either. I think Detroit looks okay, but their prices are up. The best play in this game for me, per the tools, is Mike Conley. And I think that kind of tells you where we're at with this game. And I'm a huge Conley fan in general. I mean, the Ohio State grad, all-world type of guy. But when he's the best player in a game on a slate in 2025, that game is not a very appealing one. So for me, this is not one I'm looking to target hard.
No, and that makes sense. I ended up playing some unders on Conley that popped up on my lone sportsbook here in Florida. It would be the Hard Rock. Took the under of 7.5 points. Don't feel great about it. I also took the under of 4.5 assists for Anthony Edwards. Nothing showed out on the Detroit side in the tools for being advantageous on that book. But if we look at DFS, we can see that Schroeder has a little bit of juice left there in the squeeze. $6,000 now. Shooting guard, that's his main eligibility that makes him useful. He is 15% or projected for a 15% representation on FanDuel. If we look at the DraftKings side, he also has multi-position eligibility with both guard spots. He's going to be on about 20% of lineups, but I could see that disappearing if we get any more news because this just isn't overly exciting for this team. You can get a sprinkling of Asar Thompson. I see in chat they're mentioning Malik Beasley with a little bit of a remember me game here, but really nothing too exciting in the tools. If we spin over here to the Minnesota side, you're getting Anthony Edwards on about 15% of lineups. Nobody else cresting in above 7% on DraftKings, which makes it real easy to just gloss over these guys. If they end up in your lineups, it's not the end of the world, but I do not expect to see them popping up in many. And then Edwards basically reprising his similar popularity there on FanDuel. He's coming in around 17%. Let's see. Jaden McDaniels pushing towards 10%. That is because, of course, he's Washington Husky, right? He gets bonus points for that. Since you're mentioning Ohio State, I got to bring that up. Nobody's going to talk about the Green Wave, though. Wait, isn't that where did you go to college?
I went to the Green Wave, man.
The Green Wave.
I'm going to talk about the Green Wave.
So, but you get 3 points for blocks and steals. That's the bread and butter for McDaniels there. But that's kind of it in this first game. I know that you don't see it any differently because you already told me that. So let's look at game number 2 here. Get over to my run sheet and see who is missing. Ho hum. We are in is Steph Curry. In is Charles Bassey. Bassey had missed 18 games with that sore knee. So that kind of gives one more option at the center position there to get in the way of Jeremy Sohan. And then we also know that Gary Payton the second is out. This is kind of an interesting game, a little bit more up tempo for Golden State and with against a worse defense, but they're double-digit 12-point road favorites. That could curb the upside of some of their minutes. Does that open things up for the likes of Moses Moody, Jonathan Kuminga, etc.? How are you reading the Dubs?
It's not my fault we're starting out with two games that I don't love. That's just how the cookie crumbles, I guess. But
I went in alphabetical order on the side.
Yeah, no, I mean, totally. Like, it's not even a you thing. It's just how it happens to play out. But I'm not going to pretend to like this game more than I do. Golden State, the guys that you want, their prices are up. And while they might look good in this spot, as I often say in NBA DFS, there's frequently spots that just look really, really good and better than other ones. And that's tonight with Charlotte and New Orleans. So for me, I think like spending up on one of the Golden State guys to be contrarian is always in play. Kuminga, fine look at 5,600, but he's a contrarian play. He doesn't really project great for his salary. Their prices are up. I mean, they do not look good in the tools at all. Steph projects for under 40 fantasy points at over 9K. Like, he's low owned, but he's negatively leveraged. I don't really see how you prioritize any of these guys. I mean, sure, you'll keep them in your pools if you're playing 150, and we know Steph Curry can always go off, but I don't even know if I'd get to any of them if I were playing 20 lineups here.
No, it absolutely makes sense. Nobody's over 4.3% in the optimal rating for DraftKings, and that's Curry. That is a low number. If we turn our attention to FanDuel, you get Draymond Green about 12%, Butler just shy of 10%, but then nobody else is much higher than 5%. So that just kind of allows us to skip over things. Now, here's where you can kind of start thinking things through, and that's why I was mentioning some of the secondary players here. This could be if there is a lead as expected, this could be a Draymond Green, Jimmy Butler, Steph Curry not playing a lot in the fourth quarter. That's what we're seeing with their projections being somewhat curbed. It's taking into account this blowout potential. It's hard to project blowouts, right? We don't know if it's going to happen early. Does it happen late? But this is one of those where we kind of see how things are going to play out. But then you see craziness happen with the three-pointer. The Washington Wizards were on the wrong side of that one when they gave up 163 points or whatever that was earlier this week. But even in that one, I think it was Detroit that did that to him. They didn't even really drop the hammer until midway through the third quarter. It was just kind of your normal, oh, wow, Wizards are down by 15 or whatever situation. And then they just got their ass kicked. So basketball is just, it's like a pig on LSD at this point.
And projecting blowouts, to your point, is a dangerous game. I mean, it's almost a fool's errand because they happen in so many different ways.
Indeed. Now, let's get to some games here that we can talk about, but I've got to let everybody know time is running out here. We've got promo code CYCLE that gets you through April 3rd, all of these Stokastic tools for MLB for $1. If you would have picked this up before opening day, you could add it all for $1 for another 3 days. You would add Thursday, Friday, Saturday. Oh, I guess it's 4 and today, but you can still get it for half a week here. Just $1. Check that out. Promo code CYCLE. I see we are also near 1,000 people. Please do give us a thumbs up. Consider subscribing to the YouTube channel. And of course, we do have our podcast network that spins out most of our shows that are not the Live Before Lock variety. Okay, next game, Matt. two fun ones. And we'll start off with Atlanta. Atlanta and Milwaukee. Looks like Karis LeVert is likely to play. He's been dealing with an illness, so we'll have to see what ends up officially happening. That is really the only question mark that we have there for Atlanta. For Milwaukee, no Lillard, no Portis. Giannis expected to play. So this is actually a kind of an important game for both teams. You have Atlanta that is battling with Miami to Atlanta is battling with Orlando to be the top team in the play-in tournament. Right now they're tied. Orlando has the edge. The team that is first hosts the team that is second in the play-in tournament. If they win, they're in as the seventh seed. If they lose, they get a second chance. So both teams really, Orlando and Atlanta, would be definitely playing to win this one. This is also sort of important for Milwaukee. I say sort of. They're looking to maintain their spot. They really can't improve their lot that much. They could backslide a little bit, but banking a win or two here to be able to give Giannis some rest towards the very end of the season is probably in the cards tonight. But we can see that this is a relatively close spread in this game. What are you thinking here for Trae Young? He's rather expensive at this point, but he has been carrying the mail without Jalen Williams. You've got the Great Barrier Thief. His salary is increasing. He leads the league in steals. You've got Vit Krejci. Maybe he gets another spot start. If he gets a spot start, I don't think he'll be as efficient as he was in the last game. And then you have Onyeka Okongwu, who has just been having a phenomenal season. Salary also increasing commensurate, but he is in play with the way that the chips are falling tonight, because on DraftKings we can play two centers. He has power forward eligibility as well on FanDuel. We finally have something to talk about, Matt. What say ye on the Hawks?
We all know you meant Jalen Johnson, not Jalen Williams.
Damn it, did I do that again?
Just to show I'm listening. I mean, if nothing else, I'm listening to you.
To show I'm old.
I'm hearing what you have to say, EMac. And
are you gonna pick up what I put down there?
I'm trying.
Okay. Don't hurt your back. We're getting old. I already am old.
I like it. I like Atlanta here. This game clearly more appealing than the past two. Not as appealing as the New Orleans Charlotte game, but really good plays here. Spend up options, and there aren't a ton of spend up options on this slate, and we've got a lot of value. So Giannis, 80% owned, basically 80% chance of being optimal. I mean, it makes sense. He projects for 60 fantasy points, and let me see, the next highest player on this slate projects for 47, and that's Trae Young. And Trae Young's also really popular. About half is owned as Giannis, half is likely to be optimal. Clearly easier to fit because he's 2,400 less. Giannis is a much higher priority. I mean, no doubt about that. But Trae Young in his own right looks really good here just because we don't have spend-up options that project well. Another slate kind of like we had last night. So you want exposure to this game. Again, I don't think you have to fit in Trae Young the way you do Giannis, but I think Trae looks like a really good play. And then after that, I think the secondary and third tier Atlanta plays look pretty good. I'll say they look good, not great, but good. Okongwu coming in with pretty low ownership, nice leverage. Doesn't have the greatest chance of being optimal, but it just isn't getting any love. Karis LeVert, 4,700 projects for 25 plus fantasy points. I'm cool with that. Don't love him, but fine playing him on a slate like this. Dyson Daniels is a guy I'm interested in. He doesn't project amazing, 36 fantasy points at 7,400, but 15+% chance of being optimal, only 10% ownership, slightly under that. So I like guys like that in a game that's clearly appealing from a DFS purpose. So yeah, I think you want Atlanta in this spot, like no doubt about it. Just a matter of how you get it. I think playing Trae is the easiest and likely best way to do it, but he also is expensive. So I could see playing Giannis and then running it back with a couple other Atlanta guys.
Yeah, it's and funny enough, last night, remember we were we were looking at Josh Giddey and saying, "Oh, he's the newly anointed guy. We gotta go there." And he didn't have a good game, right? So we could see that from Trey. But to your point, we got some money. We don't have a lot of exciting places to put it. Giannis is going to be one of the most popular players on both sites. So, we start to look at Trey, and he projects out for low 40s fantasy points. I mean, that's not very exciting, especially in the low 9,000s, 9,500 on DraftKings, 9,300 on FanDuel there. But he has made it to 50 fantasy points in 7 of the last 9 games, just barely. He continues to lead the league in assists with a career high 11.4, and in his last 8 games, he's gotten back to increased scoring there, 27 points per game. So that's better than when Jalen Johnson was playing and taking up a lot of the usage there. So that's kind of the case for Trae Young. Normally, we would then say counterpoint. We've got Damian Lillard. We don't have Dame time. Dame is out with deep vein thrombosis, which is essentially blood clots or the high risk of blood clots in his calf. So I don't think he's been ruled out of the postseason yet, but essentially he's out for the rest of the regular season. They'll evaluate things in 2 weeks, but there's a pretty good chance they just he's done for the season. Zachary Risachet, the rookie, I was advocating to push him for the under on his points last weekend. That came to fruition. He's been getting a little bit of in-game rest rather than just sitting games because, again, it would behoove Atlanta to keep winning here so they can get that top slot for the play-in tournament. I actually liked his over on 12.5 points tonight. So I think he has a teensy bit of interest there. That was more on the sports wagering market, but that was checking out Portfolio EV. Remember, everybody who has not yet signed up for Portfolio EV, you can get a 7-day free trial for all new users if you have not used that opportunity yet. So check that out. Stop guessing, start winning. Portfolio EV. Do you think Vit Krejci starts again tonight, and how worried are you for the effectiveness of an ill Karis LeVert?
Not worried about it if he plays. Do I think Krejci starts? I'm not sure.
Be interesting. Anything else you want to throw out there, Terrence Mann, Georges Niang, or shall we start talking about all Giannis all the time?
Yeah, I think let's pivot to the Milwaukee side.
All righty. Giannis currently projects to be on almost 80% of all lineups. He has nearly that for his optimal rate. How are you 80%, Matt, and you're really not over or under leveraged? That's the way the cookie is crumbling.
Because there aren't any other spend-up options today, and there's a lot of good value. Zilch. So his raw points matter a ton on a slate like this.
Yeah, that is absolutely the key. We're missing too many second fiddles here on a lot of the teams. So Giannis, we've talked about him all year, 2-time MVP, not much more to add. Kyle Kuzma getting more scoring opportunities here. He's had to step up with Lillard out in his last 6 games. 4 times he has 16 field goal attempts. The other 2 he has 10. Random numbers there, but he is definitely pushing to be someone that can get mid-30s minutes and push for a low to mid-30s PRA, points plus rebounds plus assists. So that is something I think is a little bit interesting. Brook Lopez, he's an April Fool. He's going to be 37 in 2 days here, Matt. He has 21 or more points, NBA points, in 3 of his last 4. Ryan Rollins and Kevin Porter have been, it's the old cartoons where, Morning Ralph, Morning Sam, where the guys exactly split time and they wave to each other as they clock in.
I don't even know that one. I don't know that one.
Oh, man.
That's like black and, that's like the black and white. Like
it was color. They used Technicolor.
Okay.
All right. Malakar, you can back me up on this one. In any event, these guys are hardly sharing the floor, even though they could. Rollins got the last start, laid it down, finally put everything together. Otherwise, it's been Porter who has been the better fantasy option. We're kind of looking at a range of outcomes for each of them, somewhere between 22 and 28 minutes. Whoever starts gets that slight edge, but that doesn't mean how it's going to play out. What do you like here for our 3.5 options that exist on the Bucks outside of Giannis?
So, yeah, just like diving a little bit deeper into Giannis is exactly what we said. There isn't even another player over 10K on this slate, and there's a bunch of really good value. The other part of that is even the guys like 9 to 10K don't project well. So even if Giannis puts up like 55 here, as long as he's the highest scorer on the slate, like you're going to need him probably. You know, there's obviously chances where like he goes for 50 to blowout or whatever. He just doesn't play great. And a couple other guys are better than him, but that's unlikely in this spot. So I think you just play him and move along. Yeah, Giddey backfired last night, but as good of a play as Giddey was last night, Giannis is a better play tonight just because the price tag matters even less, and it's still Giannis versus Giddey. So play Giannis here, move along. As far as like the point guard goes, God, I think KPJ is just so much of a better fantasy player than Ryan Rollins. Our tools really like Rollins though. Yeah, our tools are like lower on some of the Milwaukee guys that I usually like tonight, which is interesting to see. Yeah, so Giannis is the only priority. Rollins is still really cheap. So he looks good here. I do like the value from the Charlotte New Orleans spot, a game we'll get to, more than like the Ryan Rollinses of the world. Yeah, KPJ 5,100 now. Kuzma and KPJ, two guys that have looked really good. Like obviously, certainly when Giannis has been out, don't look great today. Prices have been bumped up for the Bucks. So even Brook Lopez, like I like Brook Lopez and I played him a bunch like during this stretch where Dame has been out and obviously Portis has been out and that one game Giannis was out or 2 games he was out, whatever it was. But it's a little bit of a tough swallow to spend 6,300 on him with Giannis in. I think he's a fine play. He's coming in with some leverage, but I don't see any like true priorities on Milwaukee outside of Giannis. And to be completely honest, like I could see, you know, in one lineup tonight or playing 3 entry max, you know, a couple of my lineups being like Giannis and then the entire New Orleans Charlotte game.
Yeah, that's I'm just looking through this, and that is the game that is just popping here. If we look over on FanDuel, just for clarity, Giannis is expected to be on 52% of teams. He has a 70% optimal rating. I expect that to neutralize as we get another additional information coming in. We'll see if we get our surprise scratch of the night, because that seems to always be lurking on Saturdays and Sundays. Let's see. What news do we have? We do know that Gershon Yabusele is going to be out. We'll talk about that game in a minute. They had talked about monitoring his minutes, didn't really do it, and then now they're just going to give him the night off. So, boy, Philly's going to be interesting here. That takes us to game number 4. That is the aforementioned Charlotte Hornets at the New Orleans Pelicans here. No more LaMelo Ball. LaMelo Ball. He's going to be out for the remainder of the season. They're talking about having arthroscopic procedures on his sore wrist and ankles. So they're going to get that taken care of. We have who else is out? Curry is out. Seth Curry. No Mark Williams. So that's going to open a few things up. We have Bridges that still getting 30 to 32 minutes. I think they're going to shut him down at some point here. But over his last 7 games, Maddie's averaging only 30 minutes, 15 points, 6.5 boards, 5 assists, and 1 stock. That is a far cry from when he laid the hammer down and had 50-plus fantasy points in 6 of 7 games, including leading the slate twice with like 60-point games. That was just wild. We're not getting that. We're not getting that.
No, that was wild, though, to your point. That's exactly what I was thinking of. There was like a 2-week stretch where he was like Jokic light in terms of his fantasy production. And now he's like not even in play anymore, mostly because of his minutes. And, I say that in jest that he's not in play. He's still got a 22% chance of being optimal, but he's a far cry from the play he was a couple weeks ago, to your point.
Yeah, and when we look at something like that, he is definitely in play. You just have to understand that attainable upside he's gonna have to get there on efficiency.
He's like Anthony Davis was last night, but
yes,
it's even more of a slate to play a guy like that tonight because he's not going to give you full Miles Bridges upside, but he's 9K and projects for 43.5 fantasy points. That's still 4 more fantasy points than Steph Curry, who's the same price. So he even looks better than some of the guys in his range, even though I don't think you have to get to that range because it doesn't look great. But if you do, he's one of the better options.
Yep. We can see that he is third most popular option on DraftKings. He was more from his team. He was the most popular on FanDuel. You've got Yusuf Nurkic splitting the center spot with Moussa Diabate. I don't think it matters who starts in this one. This is another one that we'd like the starter, but either one could get in foul trouble. Neither one's really going to get played off the court for two teams that really don't care about winning. And there's the decimated front court there for the Pelicans. So I think we should all be leaning towards Nurkic, but that's kind of where the field is. Do you have specific thoughts about either of the pivot men for the Hornets?
I think you can totally play them both together. The only reason I wouldn't here is because there's other good centers like Misi and Bona, but you look at Diabate and Nurkic, they're a combined 6,900 and they project for a little bit over 50 fantasy points. So you do the math. That's obviously a really good score. Now you're probably, shorting the upside of both of them by playing both because ultimately Nurkic is going to have higher upside being on the court more and that they're not going to play together. So for that reason, and there's other really good plays that are cheap on this slate, I don't think you have to play them together, but totally in play. I prefer Nurkic. He's just the better fantasy producer, projects for significantly more fantasy points and is more expensive, but still way too cheap. I like both though. They both are two of the better plays on the slate. Nurkic looks like, outside of Giannis, the best play on the slate. After that, KJ Simpson, negatively leveraged, but I don't care. I'd rather play him than Ryan Rollins, basically the same tag in this game environment that I really like. He's 4,400, projects for a little bit over 27 fantasy points. Again, I don't love the ownership, but I'm fine eating that and getting a little bit different elsewhere. Tijan Salon, 3,300, projects for 20 fantasy points. He's not getting much love. He's a piece of this game I could buy into just for, roster construction and getting different type purposes. Nick Smith, 4,300 in play. Don't love him, but don't dislike him either. We talked about Miles Bridges. I think those 5 guys are wildly in play, and they range from being auto locks like Nurkic to guys that are fringe plays like Salon.
Yeah, and for these guys, there's been enough missing time for Ball that their salaries have all kind of gotten to where they need to be, and Okogie had been out as well. So Daquan has been starting, kind of in that shooting guard, small forward spot. We've seen Simpson bounce in and out. So I agree with you. He would be the guy I like better than Rollins, even if Rollins is starting. But we're starting to not have warm and fuzzy feelings with the DFS quality or safety of these guys here. Quickly, just wrapping up on FanDuel, Nurkic is 4,700. And it costs you your center spot. So he's only coming in on around 20% of all lineups. That's because, you have to give up the likes of, Şengün or who was the other one? Gobert. And you at least get to play Okongwu at power forward. But it's kind of hard to go with Nurkic there. Let's see. We should probably talk about the Pels. They are, down pretty much their entire starting rotation at this point. Zion hasn't played in 5 or 6 games. He's not playing tonight. Let's see. CJ McCollum is out for the 3rd consecutive game, dealing with the sore lower back, also known as asset management. Jordan Hawkins is out with a sore back. I'm missing. Who is the other person that was scratched? In any event, you've got Elfrid Payton back in the mix here. You have Jose Alvarado, who I think is kind of intriguing. Oh, it was Olynyk. Olynyk is playing. I thought he might be out. He was dealing with sore calf or something like that. But Olynyk and Yves Missy and Carlo Matkovic are filling out the front court once again, going against a team that plays fast, doesn't care about defense, doesn't even care about winning here, Matt. Break down the Pels. These are going to be our best fantasy point per dollar options pretty much across the board.
Yeah, so their lineup just came out too. I think it's everything we expected. The Pels look like the best team on the entire slate, all things considered. Alvarado, I'll start with him, looks like a nice cog in the machine play. 5,500 fair tag, especially for this spot. 33.5% ownership, 34.5% optimal percentage. I like that. I like his backup even more, though. Elf. Now, he's had more of a struggle this year than he has in past years when he's gotten on the court, but he's also had some good games. And it's not often you see the second overall player in the boom bust tool be this positively leveraged. 42% chance of being optimal, 17.5% ownership. I'm just going to play guys like that all the time. Even if it doesn't work out, there's always tomorrow. I'm playing 3,300 Elf, who projects for 25 fantasy points. It's only 17% owned. So he looks amazing to me. I'd play him. I don't want to say I'd play him over Alvarado. I think you can play them both together. I do think that he offers nice leverage off of Alvarado. And at the end of the day, you can't play everyone. So I like both those guys. I like Missy here. He's also coming in with nice leverage, especially now that we got Bona. Bona and Missy look very similar, but Missy has a much higher chance of being optimal per our tools. Maybe that'll update now that Yabu's out, but it looks like it already has. So I'm going to ride with Missy in this spot. More exposure to this game. This game I really like. Bruce Brown in play. He's probably a guy I'd be happy or I'd be fine getting off of. His price tag is up there. He's not the greatest fantasy producer, and he's really negatively leveraged. So I like those other guys I talked about more, and then save the best for last. Antonio Reeves. I mean, this guy is just a chucker. He's really good offensively. I think his projection is low for this spot. He's only got an 8% chance of being optimal, but he's only 10% owned. He's 3,100. I like Reeves more than the field does here. He's a guy I'm going to play a lot down the stretch when he's in the starting lineup, especially in spots against teams like Charlotte. So I like New Orleans quite a bit here. And this is why I think it makes sense to just play Giannis and Trae Young and then fill out with value from this game.
Yeah, there's that. We will not be alone in this. Oops, team there. We will not be alone in that assessment, but it's the way things are working out for tonight. But there's still differentiation even within this. Like on FanDuel, you can look to small forward Bruce Brown. He's only going to be on 20% of lineup. Still has a little bit of positive leverage there. The Jose Alvarado leverage is decreasing just a little bit here, but for those of you willing to accept the risk on FanDuel, you've got only an $800 difference between Alvarado and Payton instead of, I think it's closer to $2,200 on DraftKings. So it makes for some interesting decision points once again. So we've got good times ahead here, Matt. Let's see, 2 more games to go. We just got a whole bunch of starting lineups. The only real changes were Gay is back in the lineup over Krejci. And then I dropped those all in chat, but then now I closed out the window where I put them all in. So let's get back there. What was the other semi-surprise? surprise. Oh, Rollins is getting the start over KJP again.
Yeah, with Giannis, then it makes more sense to start Rollins.
Yep, and you had called out Reeves. Chris Albers says, can you guys give me a winning GPP lineup? Just kidding. Let's look at favorite players for GPP tournaments on DraftKings. We'll get to that in just a sec here. Let's let the rest of these projections updates run through the tools. We'll hit on the last two games here, and then we will definitely get that for you. Chris is a long-time viewer, participant, and a very generous person. Let's go to the Raptors and the Philadelphia 76ers, Matt. So Yabusele is out. Where's the notes here? Jeff Downton, I think he's in the G League. So make sure you get him out of your lineups. He was early. We still had him somehow showing up in the projections when I was running FanDuel at 6 o'clock. I'm sure we've got him out by now. Quentin Grimes is getting rest. And then the usual guys are still out, Maxey, Embiid, George, et cetera. On the Toronto side, it is the turn for Jakob Poeltl and Emmanuel Quickley to be out, which means RJ Barrett and Akbaji are playing. This is another sort of value spot, but we would be saying that it feels like nobody's going to get more than 30 minutes. That's probably still true for Toronto. Philadelphia may have to break that rule because they're resting a couple other guys tonight, or without a couple other guys tonight. What do you like from this game? Our hidden value spot.
Yeah, so I like the
it
way
ain't pretty. It ain't pretty, Matt.
No, it ain't pretty. I mean, just two teams that are really hard to know what to make of at this point. Yeah, from the Toronto side, I think Jamal Shead, he's a guy I've played a lot. He looks good here. His price tag is up, but his projection keeps rising. He's positively leveraged in a pretty nice way. So I think Shead is overall my favorite piece of Toronto. Magbo, fine with it. I mean, 4,300 power forward eligibility. Okay, I can play him, but I'm not like going out of my way to do so. Jacoby Walter, price is up a little bit, doesn't project great. I think from the Toronto side, it's really just Jamal Shead. You can play more guys, hoping for a game environment that's similar to the Charlotte-New Orleans one, in hopes that the Charlotte-New Orleans one kind of busts, but I like that game significantly more. And then Orlando Robinson, I guess, is worth a mention too. Not excited about spending 4,700 on him, but in the context of the slate, I don't think he's like a bad play. I think things look better on the Philly side. Bona projecting really well. He's also coming in with pretty decent negative leverage. I'd rather play Messi, but I got no problem if you need the 200 to go to Bona. Jared Butler is projecting well at 6,100. Still a tough click at that price, but he's proven worth it, especially in a spot like this where there shouldn't be that much defense played. Lonnie Walker, he looks solid, nice positive leverage. Philly, it's hard to know on a game-to-game basis, but the guys that are still cheap and then Butler, I think, are in play for me. How do you see it?
Yeah, pretty similar. The pricing is appropriate for Philadelphia on DraftKings. FanDuel's just a little light on Butler. I think Lonnie Walker is most appealing on DraftKings. I think Justin Edwards is almost priced out everywhere except for the secret side. If you manage to get in on a contest there on Yahoo, they have shrunk their NBA and just about punted on MLB. So sad times for the secret site there. But that's where you can still get a good deal across the board on most of the Philadelphia players. We've seen the shenanigans for quite some time. Their starting lineup has been out for well over 2 weeks now. So everything is sort of settled in with their salaries. Just makes it tricky to go to them. Are you ready for the last game of the night? Then we can answer Chris's questions and anything else that comes in.
Let's do it.
All right, we are looking at Phoenix in Houston taking on the Rockets. Steven Adams is in. Tari Eason is out. Bradley Beal remains out. I'm sorry, this is in Phoenix. Houston is favored by a bucket. What are we doing? Let's talk Phoenix first. I keep losing on Hard Rock. They keep putting up these bonus boosted bets that involve Phoenix and usually Kevin Durant scoring and Phoenix winning. They never win. Or if they random games they barely win, he doesn't get there. It feels like I'm ready for them to be relegated, yet they're still hanging around in the postseason picture. What do we do with Phoenix here? This team got really, really, really old and bad all of a sudden, and they don't know what they're doing in their front court. It feels like they have a crappy coach.
And they don't is the thing. I mean,
I know
it's weird. It does seem like that. I mean, that team is full of dysfunction. I don't really know what it is, but I think anyone would be really happy to play them in the playoffs, even considering the amount of front end talent they have. The team's just pathetic, considering who they have on their roster. The Bradley Beal deal really sunk them. I don't think that's a secret, but
no,
yeah, sad, but. They are who they are. I mean, I don't think.
I mean, Coach Bud he was awesome with Atlanta. He should have been bounced from Milwaukee, and then now he's in purgatory here with a pair of aging, decrepit stars, a win now owner, and just a poorly constructed team that's been poorly constructed even before this owner was here. Back to the DeAndre Ayton days.
I don't feel too bad for him. He's getting paid pretty handsomely and living in Phoenix, and he's won a title. But I get your point. Like, he isn't in the best spot. He decided to take this job, though. So
yes,
he kind of made the bed that he's sleeping in, if you will.
And that would be a big old bed of money.
Yes, it would. He's like that one meme where he's just he dove in the money and is just doing the snow angels. And I can't blame him. I'd probably do the same. For DFS purposes, not an overly appealing spot from the Suns side. Nick Richards, fine play. I mean, he looks pretty good at 4,700. The problem is he projects for like 3 less fantasy points than Bona and Misi, who are the same price. So as a contrarian pivot, I think he looks good, but that's about it. Colin Gillespie.
He's got Bona or not. I'm sorry, Oso is lurking there.
Oso, yeah, he is.
Even with Bowl out, kind of back into the DMP realm. Plumlee is still getting dusted off here and there. It just, God.
Yeah, I'm with you. Like, I'm not excited to play any of these big men. I just think his price tag is still pretty low for his upside. Gillespie, he looks like he's coming in with nice leverage. I'm never excited to click his name, but it's late season NBA. He's had at least one monster game, and he's got a 6% chance of being optimal, only 1.5% ownership.
It's shocking that Colin Gillespie and then Connor Gillespie, the baseball player, they're not related.
No, I mean, Colin Gillespie is a Villanova legend, so I didn't even think about those two. That is a good call, though.
I thought about it last night when I saw both of them in the box because I'm like, I wonder if they're really. No, they're not. Surprisingly, they look like they could be, but they're not.
I know Gillespie has at least one other brother, I think, that played at Villanova, but I'm not positive by that. I might be thinking of Archie Diacono, 2 white Villanova point guards. From a spend up perspective, it's hard to say I love these guys. I mean, I don't, but kind of goes back to what I said before. You mentioned this point last night when we talked about, I can't even remember who, but like, it was Anthony Davis, I think, and not even playing him because you think he's going to have a massive game, but just because you think the popular spend up options might fail. I view Durant in that same mold. He's 9,700 and he only projects for 41 fantasy points, but he's like 3 games away from putting up 60 in back-to-back games. So like, he's a contrarian spend up option I could get behind. Just know you're leaving projection on the board. That's usually not smart in NBA, but it is a weird slate in that there just aren't good spend up options outside of Giannis, and he's one guy. Like, one guy can always fail. So getting away from that one guy that's generating 80% ownership. I mean, we saw it with Schroeder. Like, he looked great that night. He was like 85% in a bunch of contests. I mean, that's just too high of ownership for someone like that. Now, Giannis to your point, is not even projected to be too highly owned at 80%. But what if he's, in higher dollar stuff like 93%? That's getting to be too high, if not already too high. So at that point, you start to think about like playing a KD and someone else instead of like a Giannis and 3K guy. At least I'm thinking about it. Not sure I'm going to pull the trigger there, but I think that's the role that someone like KD has on this slate. As far as like book goes, I feel similarly. I mean, he's 9,200. He's a little bit cheaper, projects for basically the same. He's also getting ownership, very negatively leveraged just because of their positions. I think I'd get to KD before Booker. Now, Booker does have shooting guard eligibility, which might help him, but I just think forward is often harder to fill than the guard spots. I mean, we got 3 point guards I know I like off the bat, and Trae Young, Elf, and Alvarado, and that's not even including other guys we talked about. So, yeah, Phoenix is a tough click here. They're a tough click any night at this point, to be completely honest, from my view.
Yeah, and in the tough matchup against Houston here. Houston, kind of wrapping them up, and we'll get to Chris's question here. Şengün is about 15% on both sites. I'm trying to double that on FanDuel. Jalen Green, is things are crowded with Green, Thompson, Van Vliet, all there. Dylan Brooks is slightly interesting because there's plenty. He can be guarding Durant, he can be guarding Booker. He'll have a role carved out for him. Jabari Smith being back kind of adds one more player in the front court, crowding things. So this game is not going to be very represented in the late slate tournament, or pardon me, the tournaments. Even though it's the final game of the night, there's not much hammer expectation to it here. But you are getting players that are probably underrepresented in tournaments, considering their range of outcomes and the upside. So this is the uncomfortable click time, but it feels like if you're looking for a path to differentiation, this is the way to get there. Oh, I can't believe I'm advocating for that. All right, I'm doing a quick update here. Boost Şengün just a touch because I'm changing my lineups here on FanDuel. So then I'll put on my screen so you guys can kind of see what I'm doing there on DraftKings. You may find it interesting, and we'll get to Chris's question here. I'm forgetting somebody. Oh, Amen Thompson. Thompson looks really. I'm getting literally zero of him on FanDuel, but I'm playing him on my one lineup on Yahoo. So again, different sites, different scoring, different position eligibility. Learn the puzzles that can be utilized to your advantage across those areas. All right, refreshing DraftKings here, taking the filter off the team. Let's help Chris out here. It looks like our most popular guards are Butler, Young, Alvarado. It looks like our most optimal guards are those three, along with Elfrid Payton. How much Payton do you want? It looks like the field's only at about 17%. Tiny risk of a DNP. I doubt it, though. But how are you riding with Payton? How many lineups? Elf on the shelf, baby.
Yeah, if I'm playing one lineup, I'm playing Elf. You know that meme that it's like if Ronaldo has one fan, I am that fan. If Elf has one fan, I am that fan. If Elf has no fans, I am no longer with us. So I'm playing Elf tonight. I'm going down with this shit. We know that it's risky, but it's late season NBA DFS, and he just looks too good in the tools for me to not play. Also, if you remember, we talked about this. He was a big component of my first ever takedown, so he's got a soft spot in my heart. I will always love Elf.
All right. So I think Elf, and then I think your other guy is Dyson Daniels. If we look at the forward position here, we got this filtered on. Oh, okay. There we go. For the forward spots, we've got Bruce Brown. I think he's intriguing. We hit on Lonnie Walker. This is a save position. You also have Antonio Reeves. If we look at projected points scored, you roll the dice with the Scotty Barnes or Jimmy Butler. Vaya con Dios with those minutes. maybe you look to Amen Thompson there, but I think I'd rather take the small forward savings. Do you see that any different?
No, I don't. The only other guy I want to call out is Ricky Council. He's popping in the tools from a leverage perspective. So you don't love Philly here, but I think Council and Edwards are two guys. Their prices are up just enough where they're not getting ownership, but not enough where they're not in play anymore.
Giannis is kind of you're just going to play him tonight. The guy I have played a lot of, sorry, let me get this uploaded. The guy I'm playing a lot of he's in my lineup on Yahoo, and then he's 60% of my FanDuel lineups is Miles Bridges. So I'm walking the plank on that one, Matt. I don't feel good about it, but here we are. What else do you like at power forward? Do you roll the dice with a Kuzma, maybe an Edwards, Olynyk?
Yeah, I think the Philly guys, Edwards and Council, are two guys that I kind of am liking more as the show has gone on. Miles Bridges, we talked about. I mean, certainly not lacking for value, guys. It's pretty easy to play someone like a Miles Bridges here, and I like that game a lot. I mentioned power forward's weak. That's the other reason why I mentioned KD is like, if nothing else, an intriguing spend up to be contrarian option because of how weak the position is. And we know on any given game, he's got upside. But from a on paper, how do they look perspective, man, I think it's Magbo, Council, Edwards, Alex Reese. Power forward's ugly here. Asar Thompson. I don't think you're building around any power forward tonight. I'll just say that.
All right. How are you feeling about Şengün at center, Nurkic, as we wrap this one up?
Yeah, so I like Şengün here. I didn't talk about the Houston side all that much, but he's just a product of elimination and that there aren't really good spend-up options. He's one of the good ones. Not a great option, but a good enough one where he's in play. It's not hard to get up to the spend-up options you want here. So, I mean, it's a pretty good matchup against the Suns. They've really got no one to stop him inside. Per the tools, he looks good, not great, but he's not getting a lot of love. That's kind of the theme of this slate. So, yeah, I like Şengün. I don't want to say I love him, but as a pivot off of a Trae Young, I think that makes a lot of sense.
All right. Oh, boy. I better get these lineups uploaded here because there are only 2 late games tonight. So let's see where I ended up. Elfrid Payton on 75% of my lineups. Nurkic on 52. Why is this file not downloading? That's no bueno. Yeah, I tried to get what I could of Şengün. And that's going to be my differentiator. And then I was hoping to also get a little bit of Booker and Durant, but I don't think I got there. Let me get these lineups in. Okay, there we go. Let's see what I ended up with here. I'm sure you got your lineup in. You're far more disciplined than I am. So I'm making a definite
statement. I don't know if discipline's the word.
Well, focusing on, I got to steer the ship. That's my primary role here. So I get yelled at if I don't. It looks like Missy, I'm triple the field on. Bona, I matched Nurkic, but look at that differentiation spot I'm taking there with Bridges. Alvarado, I matched. I got up there for Şengün. Let's see what happened with Durant. I only got the 3% on Durant. He wasn't really in the player portfolio, so even though I gave him a 25% ROI boost, there just weren't lineups that were good enough that made sense.
You're going to have to really bump his projection to get to him.
Yeah. Booker, I was able to match the field on. That's okay. I'll live with it. If I got more of both of them on FanDuel, so I'm okay with that to not quite get there on DK. And then I've got their unders everywhere. I bet way too much of my wagering bankroll today, but that's because I have Portfolio EV. You guys can get that too. 7-day free trial for all new users. Stop guessing, start winning. That's Portfolio EV. You can also get it monthly if you use our link join. You can make your choice if you want a 1-month package of The Sims or a 1-month package of Portfolio EV. You guys can check this out on the screen here. If you haven't signed up for one of these operators here, and I'm pretty sure you haven't signed up for Fanatics or Chalkboard, probably not Sleeper, a lot of you, and definitely not Better. Sign up for those and you guys can get 30 days of either a single sport Sims package or the Portfolio EV. All of that information is on the link join page in the description below there, and I will also drop that in for the DFS side in the YouTube chat. And then the second one I'm dropping, that one is for Portfolio EV. And of course, link Nightbot knows that I'm talking about it somehow because AI rules our lives, and Nightbot dropped it in at the same time there. So we made it to lock, Matt. Who are you terrified is going to ruin your night?
I mean, it's got to be Elf. Like, the DMP is always in play here for guys like this, so it's Elf.
Yeah, we didn't do the nuke of the night, but I'm sure it would have been Elf for Matt.
Yep, the Elf on the shelf. Definitely my nuke of the night. I'm riding and dying with Elf tonight.
It's gonna be a wild one here. Let me look again and see where I'm at. Alfred Payton, 75%. You have 100, I'm assuming.
I do.
Oh, good times. Well, everybody, thank you for joining here. We have had about 1,000, 1,200 here at the peak. Hit that like button on the way out. We're going to do this all over again tomorrow. We've got NBA. We've got MLB. Next weekend, we've got the Final Four, NASCAR, MMA. It's all here. Check it out. That's Stokastic.com. We have Sims for everything that you need. You guys can follow Matt on Twitter at Fantasy Tips Matt. You can find me at EMac DFS. Of course, it is Stokastic_COM. Hop into playback. I will get the games up and running there, and I'm not going to bed too early tonight, so I'll keep it going this evening. But time for dinner. With that, gamers, good luck.